Yay. So, welcome everyone. That's the very last session before the closure, and I'm trying to give you all the information that you just can imagine about Drupal security, as the sort of catchy title says, everything you always wanted to know about Drupal security but were afraid to ask. Before all the stories, before all the details, I'd like to really thank all the sponsors, especially the big ones, Aussie and Level 27, because without them, the whole event could have been happening. Okay, let's take a short look about the agenda that we will address today. I'm going to talk about myself, how I got to the field of security. We will check how reporting of security issues could happen. Also, what is the Drupal security team and what do they follow as called disclosure policy. We will check a few advisories came out recently, and also talk about risk assessment, how we evaluate risk in Drupal field. And also there will be some lessons learned in the end. Okay, who am I? First of all, I'm Balázs. I really like to call myself Captain Reject, even though most of the people reject that name, doesn't matter. It's kind of like rejection of the rejection, so it's exception. I'm a very, very proud Hungarian, but living in Brussels. And I work with Drupal since 2007. Currently, it's super funny because whenever I give a session, I always have to adjust my titles from my work because it always changes. So currently, for the record, I'm an IT security analyst and being a Drupal security correspondent at the European Commission. Please don't ask me about the details. I'm also a provisional member of the Drupal security team since this February, and an organizer and a dreamer, and basically that's one of my newest projects, which is called Seckles Day. We will talk about it a bit later. And yes, I have that mental disease. I really, really, really love the animated GIFs. Yay! Okay. How I started. Basically, it happened last year, somewhere in the middle, when the very first security advisory was announced, which was the Facebook like button. I know it's not really readable, but doesn't matter, it's on the left. And I felt like, yeah, I made the first step. Basically, it was just reported a few weeks before it came out. We contributed in the private issue queue with the maintainer, and yeah, it just happened. The first steps, something really cool started, and I felt like, yay, I'm someone great. Then happened what happened. Many more advisories came out last year, and in this year, with the 5 field sources, I became a provisional member, which was like really, really like something amazing. But also, if you think about being a security researcher, like checking the code, how is it written, there is another session that I gave and planning to give in the future again, which is about how we can write Drupal, secure Drupal code. But this session is not about that. Basically, it always starts with thinking as an attacker, as a bad guy. Not necessarily trying to hack the website itself, like injecting cross-site scripting stuff, or trying to bypass some access checks. Not necessarily, but I always suggest, if you know the tool, which is Drupal in our case, you understand how it works, then try to overthink it, how it can be broken. Because all security issues are basically just bugs, but releasing sometimes information or disclosing informations or allowing you to access resources on the website that you should have, things like that. But obviously be ready. There will be lots of false positive issues, especially if you check the code. Imagine a few thousands of lines of codes, all of them are with like, in a Drupal 7, in a TPR file, everything is like print $sign something. Yes, you have to check as a security researcher all the variables. Where is it sanitized? If it's in the whole chain ever sanitized, then that's a false positive issue. If nowhere, that really should. I'm talking about XSS now. Okay, imagine you are a security researcher. Try to imagine that mental problem. Yeah, you want to find issues. What you have to do? That's a basic question. Because we are in open source field, we share our knowledge, we want to make aware of everyone, especially on the security field. We should not disclose these informations that we have, that we found. Maybe it's not even a vulnerability that we found. So, go to the project page, Drupal core, or a contrib model, for instance. Easy breadcrumb, and scroll down for a while to find out the report, the security vulnerability. Click on that link. Super nice. You will be redirected to a private issue queue under security.drupal.org. You even can start there to open a new issue, to choose the correct project, like core or contributed ones, and basically just fill it up. We always try to ask people as deeply you are able to reproduce the issue, write it down, because it gives lots of value. Imagine the case when someone validates an issue, either a Drupal core, Drupal security team member, or someone else who has access to that issue because got invited. Then when you give as much details as you can, you will help that person to validate the issue. It's very, very important. With bugs or with feature requests on the public queue, it goes the same. As much information you have or as much idea you have, write everything down. You help with it. This is contribution. Let's talk about the Drupal security team, as I also mentioned. Currently, sorry if someone is disturbed by that. I mean, like, it's very catchy. So currently, from 3 continents in the globe, there are residents who contribute to that team. It's a volunteer-based team, currently has about 30 people from the given countries. Being here for over 4 years, living in Belgium, I'm just so proud of having Belgium there also, but I think many of other countries are also there. My own one, Hungary, is also, so like, I'm just happy, you know. Basically, currently, we have the 3rd team lead in the history of Drupal security team, Michael Hess, and yeah, the guy doesn't really look like Michael, but yeah, like Woody Allen, you know. What they follow, all the members, is called disclosure policy. Why is it important? Because these people, and also the maintainers of the project that is reported, validated, stuff like this, should follow these principles. Before the advisory come out, usually on a Wednesday evening, as we all know, I mean here in Europe, there are things that we could or we can even share with colleagues or with management even. But there are things that we should keep as a secret. You can see any information that is already public. You can talk about them to your colleagues, to your friends even. Like the release window, it will come out this Wednesday, okay? And also only the numeric criticality. So do not release anything about the type of the vulnerability. Is it like an SQL injection or an XSS? No, just say 20 out of 25, period. No one will judge you. Especially my managers are always okay, especially in the public sector, it's hard, but they are always okay with just having that information. Guys, because I was involved in a security issue, I know in this Wednesday it will come out, most probably, because you know, always something can happen, and it will be highly critical, above 20 score. Okay, that's all. All the other things, especially how the issue can be mitigated, how the risk can be lowered, please do not share before it comes out. What we have to know about the security advisories itself, They are, and the Drupal security team only cover the stable models. So if you have a beta, alpha, gamma, all the Greek letters, no, they are not covered. And also the models that are not hosted on Drupal.org. So whomever hosts something on GitHub, Bitbucket, wherever, those models are not covered by security advisories nor the security team. And it's important to keep it in your mind. Every Wednesday something can come out. But usually, and that's the time frame, but usually every third Wednesday is the one that is reserved for core updates. Except if there is a public service announcement. That usually happens a few days before, so not like a few minutes. And it says, we are out of the normal release window, but we will release something. Usually it happens when the risk is enough high, at least as far as I know, critical, or even highly critical. Remember remember this year when we had core issues, they were always with PSA before. Okay, I'm speeding up. Yeah. So, last few years, you can see the picture. It's only about how the new Drupal core versions got introduced and how many new vulnerabilities got advised to update. There is one sort of funny post that I got after Drupal Europe when I showed the same slide and people were like, okay, so Drupal 5 is the most secure one. No. And from the last year, these countries were at least participating in filing issues that got introduced in an advisory. I think it just shows how huge is our community, how many people are involved. In the last year, I don't know, about 100 advisories, how we all can do things to make Drupal more secure. Risk assessment. There is a small quote from Wikipedia saying risk assessment basically introduces control measures to eliminate or reduce any potential risk-related consequences. It only means if there is a risk, it has to be in a standardized way evaluated how big is that risk. What Drupal security team does is basically 6 categories, giving different scores for that. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna explain all of them. What is very important to keep it in your mind, all of them has a score, and basically the summary of these scores are given as the 20 out of 25. Okay. Always everything is evaluated first in the private queue, then a member validates it, and then it goes out. What you can think about when there is an issue and you don't have 24/7 service, or you are just not paying enough attention, it always can happen. In the next morning you will face exploits. As we saw before, under the exploit there is a theoretical and a proof. Please make sure you always check at least that one, that category. Because if it reaches exploit, it means there are already exploits in the wild saying your site might be compromised. So don't be so sad if your site gets hacked. We said that, huh? Okay, there are some lessons that I would summarize that we could have learned. That was really fast. Based on the very last contrib advisory, which was a few weeks ago for paragraphs, it was an access bypass that we see moderately critical, 10 out of 25, which resulted anonymous users. As you see the second one, A, semicolon none, so no authentication is required for that, but in only a few cases as TD, target distributions, as uncommon, can things happen, can exploit happen against your site. So it's not enough to know what is the vulnerability type, which is an access bypass, but always check it in the context of the security risk. Because another access bypass last year for the core resulted critical, which is one level above, because it, even though required user authentication, but confidential and integrity impact were the highest points, meaning confidential data on your website could have been leaked if there is an exploit, and also integrity of the website can be highly affected. And as you might have seen, the target distribution is also not uncommon, but default, meaning basically Drupal ships as a default setting that can be used for the exploit. So it's not like something that you might have accidentally done on your website. Yeah, and there is one more, which is the core. This year we had, that's the second one, the 002 and the 004, which were like remote code executions reaching both of the cases highly critical. The second case with the, as we call it, follow-up issue in April, were originally only critical. I didn't wrote there the full string of the risk, but basically because it was in about 5 hours discovered having exploits in the wild, it was changed and resulted highly critical. It always can happen. If there are exploits that the security team discovers, or we get other information by other vendors or by other institutions, then it might change. The other parts of the security risk stays, but the exploit can always change. Which was even worse case 4 years ago, when I think most of us still remember when we got the SQL injection. It was about 2 hours to get exploits. If you were not enough fast to deploy, to make your websites updated, you should have considered all your servers, especially SQL injection and remote code execution issues, compromised. Solution, build it up again. There is one more thing that I would like to address today. These were basically the slides, which is my personal loved project. We made it last weekend in Germany, in Essen, which was in the Perfect House, if anyone knows it. It was an unconference, and I like to thank all the attendees because it was just a huge effort with an unbelievable community. But the story doesn't stop here. And I like to encourage everyone, especially the people who are close enough, Haarlem in the Netherlands, because we are going there. 11th May 2019 will be the next Secure Open Source Day, which is the Haarlem edition or Haarlem version. We will post all the details in the coming few days or few weeks. I really hope I will meet many of you there, and yeah, we will just increase overall security awareness, because that's my personal job, that's my thing that I believe should be addressed, and that's the reason why I'm thanking everyone and asking, is there any question now? Okay, whoa, okay, there are questions, fine, should.
For us, it's really important. Often the release window is 2 hours, and the release is not done at the beginning, but sometimes it's like at the end. So
for the record, let me reframe your question or repeat. So basically, is it possible to somehow shift the release window? No, it's not. Simple as this, because yeah, basically we work with mainly American team members who are active on the field. I think that's one of the reasons why especially Australians are behind. But for instance, I know members who even live in Australia and they are still active. What I would suggest in this case, at least reserve time for the third Wednesdays. And if there is a PSA coming out, then pay attention. Usually the contrib modules, if we don't have like, you know, C tools highly critical or views in Drupal 7 or stuff like that highly critical, usually it's okay if in the next morning or when you have time, deploy the fix. Also keep it in your mind if you use external services, just like I don't want to be like a marketer, but like Dropcard, they basically do it for a monthly or project-based fee, and I think it's kind of affordable. We also use similar services at the European Commission. Of course, not like 10 people, you know, are just like there, wow, when it comes out. No. There are tools. Can I still get those two questions, please?
Okay, two questions.
You were asking. Yeah.
You mentioned building it up again. What do you mean by that? You said if you're too late, after the 2 hours.
Yeah. So basically, with RC, remote code execution, it basically attacks your server infrastructure. So what should happen if you miss that release window? First, check the logs. No, first move the whole service to another place. Then separate the current infrastructure, check the logs. If in the logs you don't find anything, then it's sort of okay, sort of. On the other hand, building it up from scratch means like forget all the things that you had there, because it can be compromised. By the RC issue this year, we saw many attacks which were resulting Bitcoin minings. And you just can't really see if you remove the file that makes that job, isn't there any backdoor that will put it back, so that's basically compromised. Remove the whole system, so like start it or build it up from scratch again. That's basically the meaning of it. Okay. And yeah, there was one more question if you want.
Yeah, you mentioned that one of the score systems can make it go up.
Mm-hmm.
The one
that's the exploit.
where there is an exploit. Are there like automatic systems that can detect whether it's exploited in the wild, or are you do you have to wait until these companies come to you and say, hey, we have been exploited?
Okay, so the question was basically, is there any monitoring system that we could follow? I would say follow the announcement by Drupal security team, also on Twitter. Yeah, subscribe. Also on Drupal.org there are email or newsletter stuff. You always get them. When it changes, you don't. Yes, I know.
This is actually not what I meant. I mean, how do you know as working?
Me.
Yes. How do they know how to up the score? Like who updates?
Okay, so basically who updates the team? The team itself, Drupal security team you meant, right? That I don't know. What I only can say in my working conditions, we have dedicated teams who make monitoring activities. And if they discover, or even in the logs, incidents, they might even report it to Drupal security team. Guys, here is a sort of proof of concept or even an exploit or at least an incident, please respond. That's how it goes. With other vendors, I just don't have the information.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a closing session now in the Aussie room, so let's head there.
Thanks.